Our first panel will be discussing the military-connected student on campus, and the second will be discussing the military-connected students in the workforce. We will have a brief presentation of awards between the two panels for our legislators who have answered the call of duty in service of our state and our country. Unfortunately, Representative Lear, who was to serve on our second panel, will not be able to make it today. Next, I'd like to introduce President John Langell. He is one of those people who has so many titles, I'm never quite sure how to introduce him. He is a retired colonel, a physician, a surgeon, and the president of NeoMed, one of the newest members of the IUC consortium, and NeoMed was established in 1973. President Langell has been the commander of the U.S. Air Force healthcare facilities and served our country as a deployed flight surgeon during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Please help me welcome President Dr. Colonel Langell.
Thank you so much, President Lanise. It's my honor to be able to welcome you to the Inter-University Council's Military Connected Student Symposium. Before we kick this off, I had an opportunity to meet with several of you in the audience, and I have to say I'm in awe at those who are attending here today. We have civic leaders, patriots, veterans, all of you coming together to see what we can do to better support our military-connected students. But that term, military-connected students, is one that many people have said, well, what does that mean? Is this veterans? And in fact, we used to use the term veteran students, but military-connected students, it's meant to be more inclusive. It's to recognize that the impact of serving our country is not just on our veterans, but also involves the families, the spouses, the dependent children, and it also involves those who are actively serving, both in the active duty military, in the reserves, in the Guard, in addition to our veterans. It's critical for us to remember that these are our nation's heroes. They stepped up to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and our way of life. And they are all willing to get in harm's way to defend your freedoms, sometimes at the ultimate sacrifice. It is our job to ensure that we repay that debt. And it is one that we really cannot adequately repay. And gratitude alone is not sufficient. We have to do more. That debt is huge in Ohio. We have 9,301 military-connected students who are currently enrolled in one of Ohio's public universities. 9,301. Think about those who serve. About 7% of Americans are veterans of the United States Armed Forces, but that number is rapidly declining. In fact, if you look at the data, it was presented by the Vice Chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the former General Paul Silva from the United States Air Force, who noted that only 1% of U.S. men and women will wear our nation's uniform in some incarnation: soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Guardian, active duty, reserve, and guardsmen. 1%. So we have a tremendous debt that we owe these individuals, and it's one that will be very, very difficult for us to even begin to adequately repay. These heroes deserve our best. And in Ohio, our higher education institutes need to step up to make sure that all of them have the opportunity to get the very best education, and that we are providing them the resources, support, and infrastructure to allow them to thrive in their chosen collegiate pursuits. Nearly all of you in the audience understand how difficult it can be to get through college, to pursue your degrees. Those challenges can be great, including the endless hours of studying, very difficult coursework, while also balancing family and civic duties, hobbies, sports, and of course, financial challenges. It can be daunting, but those challenges are greater for our military-connected students. We know that. Most of them are older. Because of that, they haven't been in education recently. They don't have the studying skills. They don't have the support infrastructure. Many of them have to work, often full times. Some of them, in fact, more than half, have families, spouses and or dependent children. And we do know that the majority of them have multiple risk factors for failure. Those risk factors include delayed enrollment. That's coming in later to college, forgetting what it was like to learn and to study and to have an understanding of what you need to succeed. Another one of those is being part-time in college. We know that places you at risk. Some of them have children and families. Some of them are single parents. Nearly all of them are financially independent. And that doesn't mean they've got the dollars. It means there's nobody else there supporting them. And some of them have to work full-time, while others don't yet have a high school diploma, putting them at greater risk of failure. Not all of them are the same, and that is critical for us as their support infrastructure to be able to note. While they do have some similar needs, there are many that are different based on the populations. Our active duty students who are pursuing their education while also actively serving full-time have tremendous challenges. The military, because of the needs of serving our country, may take them every 2 or 3 years and move them across the country or across the world, disrupting their lives, disrupting the family situation that they've evolved for their support in their local communities, and pulling them away from the classrooms that they may have been involved in. Many of them are required to do temporary duty assignments. Those assignments can be weeks, they can be months, and once again, pull them away from their ability to study and to train, so we need to support them. And others are balancing that time they have for studying for their future in higher education while also having to study the progression and advancement in their military career, what it is they're doing for us today so that they're competently trained to go to war when we need them. And of course, there's long-term deployments, sometimes in the war zone. And those needs are unique, and we need to be able to support them. Our Guard and Reserve students have some of the same but different requirements. While many of them work, often full-time, while also serving, they're constantly concerned about that risk of getting deployed. And that risk is becoming greater and greater all the time. The potential for being pulled from your civilian sector, going into the war zone, giving up everything that you've been doing, and needing a university or a college that's understanding of the needs, the ability to reach into those distant operations and give them access to virtual training, or to give them the required time off, the breaks and periods, and to give them credit for some of the work they do while serving in the military. Our nation's veterans come to universities with a lot of problems, and many of those are illnesses and disabilities from their time in service, including post-traumatic stress disorder, a constant barrier and challenge for our veteran students as they work to progress through their college dreams to pursue their careers. Mental health challenges run rampant. About 1.5 times the risk of suicide for all veterans, and 2.5 times the risk of suicide for women veterans compared to the non-serving population. A recent study by the American Psychological Association showed that 50% of student war veterans who were students, had contemplated suicide. 20% made serious planning for it. And 7% had attempted suicide in the past. 7%. That should never happen. Then there's the forgotten group, or often forgotten group, the families, the spouses, and the dependent children. They have part of their support infrastructure from the serving family member, and when they are pulled away on deployments, they lose that support infrastructure. Some of these family members may be students at our universities, and now they don't have that spouse to help them keep the ends together in their daily lives. And they're constantly worrying about the spouse who is in the war zone and what the risks are to them. Some of them are Gold Star families who lost loved ones in service to our country. Those wounds may be recent, and they're always profound. Like many of you, I have had the opportunity to experience what it means to be a military-connected student myself. When I left active duty Air Force, when I did my initial tour, I joined up for college, and I realize now that I had 6 of those 7 high-risk failure indicators. I was a delayed student. I hadn't been in the classroom in a long time. I had to do periods where I was temporary, meaning not full-time in college. I had a family. I had to work full-time while in college. And I also was completely independent. I had nobody else to provide for me. I didn't have a wealthy family. And then eventually I also became a single parent, all while also continuing to serve as an active drilling Air Force reservist. So I understand those challenges just like many of you, and I think those challenges and concerns were greater for my children. I then became part of a dual military family, and while that happened, I deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, and I could see the impact of my absence on my family and my daughter who was attending college. Then my wife deployed to Afghanistan, and I got to feel the full brunt of what it really meant to be a spouse who had a deployed military member. I think it's harder. I was left with 2 college-age students. I was left with 2 elementary students, a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old to care for while still working full-time and serving as an Air Force flight surgeon. So I understand, just like many of you understand, but we're blessed. We had family and friends and a support infrastructure and the financial means to be able to weather that storm. But what about our young enlisted veterans, our young enlisted actively serving Guard and reservists, many of whom have significant challenges, some of whom may be barely making minimum wage or slightly more, many of them without support infrastructure, and some of them single parents, and some of them the primary caregiver for a disabled family member. That's why we're here today, to talk about how we support them and other students who are at risk, because they are our heroes and we do need to be able to support them. We're very fortunate that we are in Ohio. Ohio has deep patriotic roots. We are here to support our nation's veterans and actively serving members. We understand the importance of that, and all of you understand those values. That's why you're here today, and you're here to participate and discuss what we can do better and what we can do differently for our military-connected students. Our state leaders have been outstanding. We have wonderful programs to support our military-connected students already, to include scholarships and grant programs. We have allowed for in-state tuition for veteran service members and their dependents. We've also stated we want to give credit for military training and military experiences, and we've set up veterans offices at our institutions to support those military-connected students. And in 2022, Governor DeWine and Chancellor Randy Gardner announced the creation of the Purple Star Program, which is recognition for our independent and public universities who met a high mark and commitment to supporting our military-connected students. And the criteria are rigorous. Chancellor Gardner has been a staunch supporter of our military-connected students, and I look forward to hearing his presentation later as he closes out this symposium. And finally, I want to really send my gratitude to all of you for being here today and to being engaged as we pick a perfect time for this, as tomorrow is Veterans Day, when we recognize the service of all of those who step forward to protect and defend our nation. And a special thank you for those of you in the room who are veterans. I'm humbled to be here with you. And finally, a tremendous thank you to the IUC and President Laura Lanise for putting together this symposium. It was President Lanise's idea that we had to do this, that this was critical for all of us to be able to better support our military-connected students. And of course, we all know that President Lanise is also a veteran and comes from a long line of veterans, a patriotic family that has served in numerous branches of the military across generations. So with that, thank you very much for being here today. I look forward to the engagement and hopefully some impact on what we can do better to really support those nation heroes. Thank you very much.